Alrighty, we're just gonna straight up start over. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a beautiful, I don't even know what the date is today. It is January 12th. It's a beautiful, albeit chilly morning here, especially in Pensacola, Florida. Hopefully, wherever you're tuning in at is a beautiful day. My name is Matt, your favorite history podcaster. Got a big day, got a whole lot to talk about. Really, the topic we're going to focus on, and you can kind of see it on the screen, is not really the Battle of the Denmark Strait per se, but we're going to pop into a little World War II and chat about how the age of battleships had been pretty much over from the start of the Second World War. Now, this is something that nobody at the moment realizes, and the people that do might be, I don't want to say stubborn to realize that it isn't, but there still is a handful of people that thought that these big surface fleet battleships was in fact the play, when in fact they're not. And pretty early in the Second World War, time and time again, these things are getting shot out. I pulled up the Battle of the Denmark Strait because I figure we can focus on some of the ships that were here, because some of the ships that will sink, whether at the battle itself or shortly after or a handful of months after, all happen to be sunk. So I did pull up, okay. Let's first talk about the Battle of the Denmark Strait. Why don't we start there? Excuse me. Battle of the Denmark Strait takes place, as you can see, May the 24th of 1941. The United States, of course, is not involved in the Second World War, at least fighting in the Second World War quite yet. Pearl Harbor, as we know, does not happen until December of 1941. So United States is still a handful of months out. What we've got in the Denmark Strait is the Germans have built two of the biggest battleships. In fact, they are the two biggest battleships, I believe, in the whole Second World War that Europe will build. The Yamato will be bigger, but Germany builds, let's see, I don't know if I have it pulled up here. Look at the Bismarck battleship. This is one of my favorite ships of all time, and if you know anything about naval history, you are probably well familiar with the Bismarck. This photo, by the way, is one of the scariest photos. Look at how massive this thing is. It's actually not supposed to be this big. After World War I, there is a whole bunch of stuff that goes into the treaty. I believe it's called the Treaty of Washington, Treaty of something or other. Anyways, that says that ships can't be over, I want to say 30,000 tons. I could be wrong. You're going to have to check me on the numbers there. And the Bismarck is 20,000 tons over that at its completion. I want to say it's somewhere in the ballpark of 50,000 tons. So this thing is way bigger than battleships, at least German battleships were allowed to be at the time. And when word gets round that the Bismarck is been built, people start to tweak out. Here's one of my favorite photos. Aerial photo, Norway. Don't mind my typing. I can't spell. Doesn't really matter. Okay, this is one of my favorite photos. This right here, this top guy, that is the Bismarck. This littler ship or tinier ship right behind it, that is the Prince Eugen. The goal for Germany was to have the Bismarck go into the Atlantic Ocean and just raid on shipping and commerce to disrupt all of that going to England. Again, England being an island nation, it depended on, obviously, the ocean for all of its shipping. You can't just get all of the stuff because it's on an island. So it depended ships coming to and dropping off supplies and whatnot at all of these ports. The Bismarck and the Prince Eugen were supposed to hamper that and really just disrupt shipping and commerce. The Bismarck is not supposed to engage with other countries' flagships or other ships around the same size as it. That, of course, isn't going to happen with the Battle of the Denmark Strait, but that's the goal. Now, this has worked before for Germany. I know I've been talking about how battleships at this point are essentially already dead or dying, but the British did have a successful raid with the Scharnhorst and Gneisenau. It's the year before. They go and they sink a whole bunch of ships. So Germany's like, hey, we're going to go ahead and run that back. Now, originally, Germany wanted more than just two of these ships to go out there. Erich Raeder, he is the head of the Kriegsmarine, which is the German Navy, and he's like, yo, wouldn't it be cool if we had the Gneisenau, the Scharnhorst, the Tirpitz, the Bismarck, Prince Eugen, and just send the boys, get five big capital ships out there? Hitler's like, hey, probably not going to go ahead and do that because we're going to go and invade Russia. So you're going to need to lickety-split just get on out there. This is the Bismarck and Prince Eugen off of the coast of Norway, where they are starting to make their way out. Now, with the Battle of the Denmark Straits, I wonder if this shows a map. Sorta. Let's see. Will this pop up? Okay, there's only a handful of ways that you can go. The Bismarck is over here. So, well, pretend Norway's over here. We're looking at Denmark history books. You've got a handful of different routes that the Bismarck can sneak through into the Atlantic. It's going to choose the Denmark Strait, which is right here. And that's where it's trying to escape, like I said, to the Atlantic. Well, what ends up actually happening there on May the 24th is everybody knows the Bismarck's out. So Britain's got ships out left and right, and they're trying to figure out how are they going to engage with the Bismarck. Well, they eventually do. They have a couple ships behind it, the Repulse, the Suffolk and Norfolk, and they're just kind of shadowing Bismarck and Prince Eugen. Eventually, HMS Hood. The HMS Hood is going to be the ship. Here's a good picture of it. The HMS Hood is going to engage with Bismarck. You've got the HMS Hood and then the HMS Prince of Wales. Two very conflicting ships in the sense where the Hood, as you can see up here in 1920, the Hood was the pride and joy of the British Navy. It had been around since World War I, the World War I era. It is a battle cruiser, so it's not even technically a full battleship. It was meant to be quicker than battleships, but in order to do that, it does sacrifice a good amount of armor. So they got to refit this bad boy into having armor to go against the better, more powerful World War II ships. It still has a wooden deck. Just think about that. It's going to engage with the biggest European battleship with a deck made out of wood. It's not going to end well for the Hood, unfortunately. Nonetheless, the ship that is also, so you've got the HMS Hood and then the Prince of Wales ship. Check this out. I like being able to show you guys stuff, so don't mind my spelling again. Wow, that is not even close to how you spell that. Here we go. All right. Yep, sorry, don't mind that. There's the HMS Prince of Wales. This is one of the newer warships in the British Navy. It is a King George V class battleship, basically brand new during the Battle of the Denmark Strait. All right, so you've got an older HMS Hood, the much, much newer HMS Prince of Wales, and they sort of just stumble into, it is the Bismarck, which I had up somewhere, and the Prince Eugen. Here we go. Which Prince Eugen's just your standard, regular battleship. I won't speak too much of it. Anyways, when the battle starts, somewhere here I've got, you can kind of see the map. You've got the Hood and the Prince of Wales. They're coming at the Bismarck. The Bismarck is floating down the Denmark Strait. And the Prince of Wales and the Hood are, it's called crossing the T. This is really, really, really bad for the British because if you are the Bismarck and you're sideways, you can bring all your guns, they call it guns to bear, whereas the Hood and the Prince of Wales can only shoot their front turrets before they eventually have to, turn all the way so then they can shoot everything, all of their guns there. So right off the start, it's not looking good for the British. Lancelot Holland is the guy, he's leading the Hood, and he already is well aware that he not only has to deal with the fact that the Bismarck is ginormous, he knows that his deck is made out of wood, so he needs to watch out for, it's called plunging fire. Basically, pretend this is the top of the Hood. If a shell hits the deck, it is made of wood, it'll go through the deck, penetrate underneath the ship, and the ship would explode. He's worried about that. So he's trying to get close enough to the Bismarck where it can't shoot this plunging fire. Well, battle starts. Interestingly enough, the British are actually shooting at the wrong ship at first. What I mean by that is the Prince Eugen was leading. It was Prince Eugen and then the Bismarck behind it. Well, initially the Hood is shooting at Prince Eugen before it realizes, oh my gosh, that one's not the Bismarck. Before the Hood can even shoot at the Bismarck. It's a handful of minutes into the battle, and the Bismarck shoots one of its turrets. Missile goes flying through the air. I want to say it takes maybe a minute or so. Ends up landing. I don't know what it hits. I'm going to guess some sort of powder magazine. Nonetheless, the hood explodes, and with a crew of 1,400 people, all but 3 people end up surviving the hood exploding. And this is where I want to circle all this back to your age of battleships is dying. One of these battleships literally is from the Battle of the Denmark Strait, sinks at the Battle of the Denmark Strait. The hood goes down. There's some fighting back and forth between the Bismarck, Prince Eugen, and the Prince of Wales. The Prince of Wales actually does end up hitting the Bismarck, and that is very, very noteworthy because the Bismarck starts leaking oil and it needs to go back for repairs. So had the Prince of Wales not hit the Bismarck, the course of this conversation changes quite drastically, but it does. Once the Battle of the Denmark Strait wraps up, you've now got this chase where you've got really, we'll just say all of the Royal Navy is trying to go out and sink the Bismarck. The Prince Eugen ends up going into the Atlantic and does a fair share of stuff. I can see if I can do a Prince Eugen today. I'll actually show you the Prince Eugen today. There it is. Boom. The Prince Eugen, actually you could still get oil from Prince Eugen, which I think is kind of cool. It eventually gets turned over to the United States after World War II and is used for some nuke something or other. So it's one of the rare ships from this battle that won't actually sink during World War II. But if we go back to ships that were there, okay, so we know the HMS Hood sinks during the Battle of the Denmark Strait. What happens to the Bismarck? And this right here in May/June 1941 is when, again, really your age of battleships is dying quicker than people realize. Because once the British start sending all of their navy to go and find and sink the Bismarck, it's not the ships that will sink it, but airplanes. And what people didn't know was the air power is quickly going to overmatch sea power. And the Japanese have some awesome quotes about this when we get to the Prince of Wales. But Bismarck is now loose in the North Atlantic. That's bad. For a while, the British are following the Bismarck, and they're keeping it on radar until the Bismarck does this big loop-de-loop, and it's gone. The British have lost it on radar, and you've only got a certain amount of days before the Bismarck is under the Luftwaffe control, and it'll eventually get back to the port of Brest, which is in France, and then it could have repairs, and then a whole bunch of capital ships would go out, and the British are really worried about this. Luckily, the British do happen to see some of the oil slick that is behind the Bismarck. It's a reconnaissance plane, managed to see the Bismarck. Great, because now the British have once again found the Bismarck, and this is where the air power really takes over. You've got we'll go here, the Ark Royal. It's an aircraft carrier. Aircraft carriers, by the way, are slowly, I mean, they're so much better than battleships at this point. Here's the Ark Royal right here. And between this and the Victorious, which is another British aircraft carrier, they're going to start sending planes to go and sink the Bismarck. If people didn't realize that battleships had no chance against air power, the sinking of the Bismarck should have been such a wake-up call. Look what the British are sending out. Look at these things. British Spitfire airplanes. These are like little, they're not even, it wasn't even these ones. These were the biplanes that these ones are not them. And they are Spitfires, nonetheless. Let's see here. I don't think these are the ones that I'm looking for. Nonetheless, they are British Spitfires. The planes that the British are going to send to go and sink the Bismarck are obsolete compared to other planes in World War II, and yet they're still going to be the reason that the Bismarck sinks. So the British actually send a group of bombers to go and sink the Bismarck. They end up running into the HMS Sheffield, which is British, mistake it for the Bismarck, dive, start actually shooting torpedoes at their own ship. Luckily for the British, the torpedoes they were using were a newer brand that were having detonation problems, so they were detonating upon hitting the water. Now, I understand that they actually attacked their own ship, but that turns out to be a big blessing in disguise, because when these ships get back on board, they're like, whoa, these torpedoes don't work as it is. So they get refitted with more ordnance or more torpedoes. They have just enough light left in the day for one really just final strike at the Bismarck. The first time that these Spitfires went, they do hit the Bismarck, but nothing really happens from it. It hits the armor belt, and that's it. It's the second time that these Spitfire planes managed to get to the Bismarck that one of the torpedoes hits the rudder. The Bismarck is then locked in a turning position, and it's essentially just spinning around in a big giant circle. Really, the rest of the British Navy ends up coming in later that day, the following day, and just absolutely pulverizes the Bismarck, which will sink it's like a week and some change after its maiden voyage begins. So again, if we're talking about this is the death of battleships, between May 24th, 1941 and early June of 1941, you have two capital ships, two flagships, two major battleships from two different European powers that have since been sunk. Now let's go further. What happens to the HMS Prince of Wales? Now, the Prince of Wales does have a pretty extensive battle history. It's been all over the place. In December of 1941, it is off the coast of Singapore. And now really, this is, I think it was a problem for the British, because the Prince of Wales and a ship called the Repulse go into, or at least right around Singapore. And Churchill wants them there just basically to flex that they have real big ships. There is a handful of stuff going on at the moment, because Japan is going to bomb Pearl Harbor like right after these ships get off the coast of Singapore. But the European powers and the United States are like not super threatened by Japan, at least not yet. They thought that Japanese planes were no good. Turns out that is a huge fallacy, because the Zero for at least the beginning of the war was by far the best plane. They thought that Japanese fighter pilots were not going to be very good. Turns out that is incredibly false. Japan had some incredible fighter pilots. In fact, to be a fighter pilot for Japan in the Second World War, you needed immense training. That's why battles like the Battle of Midway take such a toll on the Japanese, because their pilots took forever to train. Whereas American pilots, if you had a pulse and somewhat knew how to fly a plane, they just, okay, there you go. These Japanese pilots their training was incredible. Anyways, Prince of Wales and the Repulse, they just show up. They're off the coast of Singapore. They're there again mostly to just flex like, hey, we're really big ships. But also they're trying to disrupt potential Japanese landing forces off the coast of Singapore. Well, they don't request any air backup, so it's literally just the two ships just hanging out by themselves. They will eventually get spotted by both Japanese reconnaissance planes and Japanese submarines. And the next day, Japan sends wave after wave of bomber planes to go after the Prince of Wales and the Repulse. And this is where I said the Japanese had these really awesome quotes. They really just say, I wonder if I can pull it up real quick. Japan pilot quote sinking Prince of Wales. He says something like they're literally, sorry, they sunk our battleship. I don't remember what it is exactly. He says he felt bad because they were just sitting ducks, and that ships will never be better than the planes flying overhead, or something like that. I wonder if I can find, there is the real actual photo of, yeah, here you go. This is so sad because this is a real photo. I don't remember the name of this little cruiser there, but this is the Repulse and the Prince of Wales sinking in the background. I think it's crazy that they have photos. That's one of the reasons World War II, by the way, is such a cool war. As you've got photos, yes, obviously they're not in HD or like the best photos, but still really eerie. This is a pivotal turning point in history, and we're just casually looking at it. Yeah, here's more photos of the sinking of the Prince of Wales and the Repulse. Yeah, very sad. Anyways, this is again where the air power is just so much better because the Prince of Wales gets hit by a torpedo immediately, and the second that first torpedo hits, the ship starts listing. It's flooding. They're like, the turrets are overheating. It's a nightmare on the Prince of Wales. Power is going down. It's awful. The Repulse, which was the smaller of the two ships, does manage to evade a good number of torpedoes. But again, this is where the air superiority is just so much better. Even though two waves of bombers go by and the Repulse is not sunk, they're like super hyped. They're weaving and dodging and all that good stuff. Eventually, another wave of bombers hits, and it just takes one torpedo, and one of these torpedoes hits the Repulse. Eventually, three more are. While they're doing that, the HMS Prince of Wales gets hit by a number of other torpedoes. I think it's maybe 4 in total. Both of them sink within an hour or so of the actual battle, if you will, starting. That's crazy. That's crazy. These ships were sent there literally to flex on how strong the British are. Japan shows up with a number of planes, and within an hour, bam, no more ships. This is, by the way, 2 days after. This is December the 10th. I wonder if there'll be a day that pops up here. I will show you what day did the Prince of Wales sink. I believe it is December the 10th. Yes, this is December the 10th. So this is 2 days after Pearl Harbor. So just from a historical context, you got to think, man, what is Japan up to? They bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7th. 2 days. It's 3 days. I can't do math. 2 days technically after the United States joins the war, I think is what I'm thinking of. Nonetheless, Japanese planes, who for a while many people in Europe and the United States thought were awful and Japanese pilots couldn't do anything, they managed to bomb Pearl Harbor, and then a couple days later, they sink these two British capital ships, and the Prince of Wales and the Repulse. That's miraculous. That is where these battleships are just, they're not it. And instead of having battleships be the main fighting force, aircraft carriers who have just been in the shadows this entire time end up becoming the thing. Like that you want aircraft carriers. That's why you have in June of 1942, the Battle of Midway. I mean, the whole reason that the Battle of Midway takes place is Japan wants to go over to Midway, bomb the snot out of Midway, and then hope that they can bring American aircraft carriers into the deep waters of the Pacific and then sink them in open water. It's just, there's so much. Even after Pearl Harbor, when some of those battleships had sank on Battleship Row, a lot of the ships just get plucked out of the water because Pearl Harbor is so shallow. So that's why Japan needed, by the way, these aircraft carriers to be in the Pacific, where it's so deep you can't, just pull them back up. But it's a mind-boggling fact of how many battleships go down, especially early in the war. Even I'm going to totally spell this wrong. Gneisenau. I'm going to have to do German ship because I am not even close to spelling Gneisenau. Close. AU. Close. I was close. This is the Gneisenau, which shortly before this is in early 1941, I believe, is when the Gneisenau and the Scharnhorst are out there raiding the shipping. The Gneisenau does not do much for most of the rest of World War II. It's literally sitting in port, and even dry docked in port, it's prone to all sorts of British air raids coming and hitting it. It'll be almost done, and then an air raid comes, and bam, a big bomb blasts a giant hole, and now the Gneisenau needs to basically be rebuilt. It's almost done. British air raid comes in, bam, same story over and over again. So even when the ships aren't in the water, they're constantly at risk for aerial attacks. Again, battleships, you could make the case even before World War II started. I mean, I don't think anybody really knew just how good these planes would be, and bombers and fighters and all that good stuff. But these poor battleships, these poor sailors that are just stranded at sea, I mean, the loss of life on some of these ships is remarkable. The HMS Hood, 1,400 people. I mean, over 1,000 sailors, 3 survivors. The Bismarck had, I don't even know how many sailors on there. I know that the survival rate on the Bismarck is incredibly low. I know that the survival rate on the Prince of Wales is incredibly low. I mean, when the Prince of Wales and the Repulse go down, you've got a couple other cruisers and smaller ships that are there trying to rescue some of the survivors. You have to think of what's still going on. There's all of these planes flying around overhead that have just sunk 2 massive ships. Now you're on a tiny ship. You got to wait for these survivors in the water to be picked up. You also need to dodge the wreckage of these ships. I know one of the things with both Pearl Harbor, the Battle of the Denmark Strait, where the Repulse and Prince of Wales got sunk, it was an incredibly hot day. It would have been absolutely miserable. But sailors were jumping into water that's got oil and fire. So some of these guys are just straight burned the second they hit the water. It would have been terrible. Just absolutely frightening, unimaginable. Now, don't get me wrong. Being hit in a plane and having your plane go down wouldn't have been much fun either. So really, in both respects to that, awful stuff. But if we want to stick with, hey, this is where we know that battleships are a lost cause. Look at this. This is the Tirpitz battleship. This is the sister ship to the Bismarck. Again, it is a ginormous ship. And same way, the Germans were so nervous that the Tirpitz would just get sunk by planes that it really doesn't play a major role in World War II. Again, it's more or less just a figurehead hanging out. I wonder, let's see if we say exactly where. It's north of Germany, just kind of between Germany and Great Britain there. Yeah, it's off the coast of Norway. Just here in the Baltics. It really doesn't do much. It eventually will get just absolutely decimated again. You've got so much British planes that come in and hit that puppy, and then that's the story with a lot of these battleships. British planes go in, hit the ship can't do anything, it either can't fire or can't move, and then British ships come in and these ships are sinking ducks or sitting ducks, and that's the story there. So even the 2 biggest battleships from the European side in World War II, planes take them out, and it's a no contest. I mean, planes take out the Bismarck, obsolete, old planes, not even good planes, take out the mightiest ship. It was so scary that Britain sent the House, and then these tiny little planes, they end up sinking the Bismarck. The biggest ship in World War II, biggest battleship that is. Also, here's the Yamato. Oh, I want images. Yeah, the Yamato is the biggest battleship in all of World War II. Same thing. Does not play really a huge role at all. I want to say it sinks in 1944 or 45. Doesn't sink another battleship. I'm pretty sure that it does get hit pretty constant by United States bombers. I don't remember which battle, if it's Okinawa or Iwo Jima. It is one of the 2, I believe, is where the Yamato goes down. But same thing. I mean, this is a massive, massive ship. Stands absolutely no chance against the bombers, the airplanes. The only, let's see if I can find it. Only battleship to sink Another. I think it's the USS Washington. Oh, not the one I was thinking of, but okay. Only battleship to sink another battleship, World War II. The Congo. That is not the one that I'm thinking of. Let's see if I can find it. Washington. Yeah, this might be it. Yeah, the I thought it was the Washington. I don't know if I had said that. Yeah. So when it came to battleship on battleship, the Washington sinks the. Don't need that. I don't remember what the Japanese ship is called. Kurishima. Yeah, that is the only battleship on battleship sinkage. By the way, the USS Washington. I will pull that up. The USS Washington, totally underrated ship. It did not lose anybody to an opposing army in all of World War II. It has a unblemished record. I won't go too much into its history because it's, that's a whole different conversation. But it's got a really cool story. Look into the Washington because it's at a lot of the big battles and just keeps going away unscathed. I believe the Washington is still sold for scrap 61. Okay, I lied. I thought it was still up, but clearly not. Do not listen to everything you hear on the internet. Oh, here you go. Here's the ship that it sunk. I got to be honest. It always makes me so sad that the age of battleships is not a thing because, man, what a pretty ship. Aesthetically speaking, they're just terrifying. Like, that is a massive, massive ship. I mean, the picture does it absolutely no justice, but it's just, what a beautiful ship, honestly. Look at this. Okay, here's the Washington. Just isn't that thing terrifying? I mean, just to see that. Also, looking at this, you've got the radar. If we're talking about your age of battleships slowly coming to an end, radar is not, I don't want to say it's bad, but I don't want to say it's good either. With the Scharnhorst, which was a British battleship, when the British end up sinking the Scharnhorst, one of the first things that happens is the Scharnhorst's radar gets hit, and this ship is just storming off. Scharnhorst is going, gets hit. It just turns around and is like, well, we'll just go back the way we came, but it doesn't have radar, so it has no idea that it's just steaming into half the other British Navy, and then eventually gets sunk. Even during the Battle of the Coral Sea and the Battle of Midway, Japanese radar at the time was not as good as U.S. radar. So they didn't have any idea how close the United States were. And in the Coral Sea, when neither of the radars were great, there's times where both sides didn't realize that they were miles away from each other. Again, that's where, unfortunately, your battleships, it's just not it. I mean, you're going to hear stories later in the war where you've got these reconnaissance planes that go thousands and thousands of miles to find enemy fleets or whatever the case may be. And then that's why your aircraft carriers end up really overtaking. I mean, they are the number one. I mean, you hear it in sports all the time. Like, if you could build your team around one player, who would it be? Or if you needed one position to start a football team, what's the position you start with? I mean, honestly, And for me, if you were a country and you needed to start building up your Army, Navy, Air Force, what would you start with? I'd start with the aircraft carrier, honestly, and then build up the planes and all that good stuff because, man, those aircraft carriers are just so important. They're so important that, what is it, the Yorktown? Look at this. The Yorktown at the Coral Sea gets absolutely smashed. I wonder if this will pop up. Yeah. Oh, boom. Gets absolutely obliterated. Well, the Lexington also, it does not go well. Poor Lady Lex. Nonetheless, you've got the Yorktown that just limps its way back to Hawaii, and then 3 days later, it makes its way over to Midway, not even 100%, but just because we can fly some planes off it, the whole course of the battle changes. Incredible. Also, funny story about aircraft carriers, and I always think of it when I see this picture. I love the silhouettes of ships. So like right here, you can see that's the Lexington. And I already kind of alluded to it earlier when I talked about how the British, unfortunately, shot at their own ship, the Sheffield. In the Battle of the Coral Sea, there's some Japanese pilots that essentially lose their way, and they're trying to get back onto their aircraft carrier. So they start landing. What they didn't realize is they were actually trying to land on the USS Lexington, which I always have thought is super funny. So they just try landing on the enemy ship. Turns out a lot of those pilots get shot out of the sky. Again, there's a bunch of U.S. guys that write about this. Like, what were they doing? I'd imagine they probably had to feel bad. These poor pilots, just thinking that they're trying to land. They've just been flying around, going through battle all day, and then trying to land on the wrong ship and getting shot. That's got to be one of the worst feelings. It's not the only time that happens during the Second World War. I believe there's one other instance. I do not remember where, though, but somebody would have to fact check me on that one. So, yeah, I think that this is an incredible... I love this photo, too, by the way. I think it's an incredible topic, talking about just, unfortunately, how the age of battleships, even from the second that the Second World War breaks out, they're, I don't want to say obsolete, but they're definitely not what they were. Aircraft carriers and planes just far and away superior. So look into a whole bunch of this stuff. I always like to look into, if you want to watch a couple videos, I'm going to throw out a couple for you. Let's go to YouTube real quick, and let's do the sinking. I always want to put a W or an H in Wales. This No Way Out video, the sinking of the Prince of Wales, No Repulse, is really, 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 really good. And then do... you can watch the SpongeBob one. I don't even know what it is. This right here, these two are incredible. They're just absolutely incredible. But yeah, look at all the battleships for the Denmark Strait. Prince of Wales, sunk by planes. HMS Hood was older when the battle started, sunk. Bismarck, sunk by planes. Prince Eugen, not sunk by planes, but it might as well have been. The Bismarck sister ship, sunk by planes. There's a lot. There's a lot here. This is a super cool battle. I love the Battle of the Denmark Strait. You get all these cool photos. You can see where the HMS Hood blows up. Let's see. We'll see real quick. I love that you can see that. Again, I think it's miraculous that they got photos of this stuff. My one thing is I wish there was even more photos. Yeah, look at this. Last picture of the Hood. There it is. I mean, this whole ship, there's 1,400 people on there, and it's going to be exploded within minutes of that. Let's see. Yeah, there it is. I can't even imagine being on the deck of a ship and watching that. What I also think is pretty crazy is the Battle of the Denmark Strait. These two ships were 16 miles away from each other. Miles. I mean, that's a far distance. Again, think about why I think the battleships were so obsolete. For as much as 16 miles, seems like it's right there. Some of these planes could travel hundreds of miles, go and drop a torpedo, and then they're safe out of range. And that to me is incredible. There's one more thing, and I looked this up yesterday. Let me see if I can find this real quick. HMS Repulse. This is just one of those. Why do I like history? I was looking at them being sunk. Leech, no. I was something Pakenham. Let me do Pakenham, New Orleans. It's not Edward that we. Okay, so here's Edward Pakenham. He's going to be the British guy that dies at New Orleans, but it's his family that I want to pull up. I think it's his uncle. And I want to find this. Let's see. Yeah, Pakenham was born to Edward Pakenham. Okay, so this is his dad, but if we go here. One of these. Honorable. Shoot, one of these guys is one of the commanders, I think, of the Repulse. And I don't remember which one it is. It's not Hercules. A lot of these guys are drowned in 1811. It's going to kill me because I think it's one of these guys' kid. Must not be him. Let's try Thomas Pakenham. Let's see. 57. I don't know if I'm going to find it, but this is going to drive me crazy. I just was looking at it yesterday, and I know it's not going to pop up. That's fine. Just a cool one. The Pakenham, by the way. This dude. No, not Thomas Pakenham. Let's see. Hold on. I need to find the guy that dies at New Orleans. Yeah, okay. This dude, Sir Edward Pakenham, dies at the Battle of New Orleans. He is the brother-in-law to the Duke of Wellington, which I think is pretty cool. Here, the Duke of Wellington is the same guy that defeated Napoleon. So, kind of cool. Anyways, that is all the history that I've got. I mean, there's just so much here. The history is so cool, and these boats and ships are fantastic. I can go on naval stuff forever, but look into some ships. There is a lot of cool stories. Look into the amount of ships destroyed by planes. Also, scary thought is look into how many ships get sunk by planes in the middle of the Pacific, where the wreckages of those ships are like miles below the surface of the ocean. That's terrifying. So there's still a handful that I'm sure they haven't found yet. And some of the ones they have are ridiculously deep. But per always, it's cool stuff. Per always, hopefully you learned something. And per always, love you all.